Gatekeeper is a top-down bullet hell roguelike clearly inspired by Risk of Rain. Pick a character, drop into a medley of environments, and shoot dudes while hoovering up items until the number stops getting bigger. It's a familiar formula with a new perspective, and while there are some mechanical and artistic similarities to Risk of Rain and its sequel, Gatekeeper feels like it's found its own identity. There's enough bullet magnetism to make abilities intuitive to land, but not so much that you can blindly chuck attacks into the crowd. Enemies range from slow-moving golems and sentient obelisks to homing droids, and kiting enemies around while picking off priority targets is key. There's a bit of Vampire Survivors in the way you draft boosts to your HP, damage, region, movement speed, and cooldown reduction. And these stats can in turn affect what items you prefer. You also upgrade your abilities as you go, increasing their AoE, adding effects like burn damage, and so on. You really get a sense that your whole kit is evolving outside the items you're stacking on. I've been dumping everything into my fireball so far and have zero regrets. There's a good variety of objectives too. In the time I've beaten one mini-boss, I've defended charging totems from incoming waves of enemies while dancing around fiery hazards, collected and deposited ancient keys, and endured horde modes with set kill counts. The levels are a bit flat, but the design suits the flow of the game and keeps the important stuff, namely items and enemies, clearly visible. In Pixel Quest Survivor action roguelite with unique and themed characters, create your build and face hordes of enemies with up to 4 friends online, kill monsters, collect their souls, face bosses, and survive. Pixel Quest Survivors is another fun and addictive bullet heaven. I welcome this explosion of bullet heavens games as I enjoy this genre a lot. It can be addictive, runs have a limited time, so there is a clear point on which you can quit the game to come back later, and it just feels good if you manage to get overpowered in a run. All of this can be found in Pixel Quest Survivors as well, which is great. But the best part is that you can play it with a friend in Coop mode. Have you ever wished to play Vampire Survivors with your buddy? Here you go. This game is a time survival game with minimalistic gameplay and roguelite elements. No Man's Sky is too big for you? Then stay on a single planet in the new survival hit and turn it into a green oasis thanks to terraforming. The basic principle is quite simple. We were sent to a distant planet devoid of any life to make it fit for colonization by mankind. The starting point? A Mars-like world drifting through space. We land here in a simple capsule. A chair, a chest with supplies, a simple workbench. That's all we're given to gradually change an entire world. Our whole endeavor is divided into stages, each representing a milestone. Our first milestone, for example, is to turn the red sky into a blue, Earth-like one. As we naturally need electricity for all our gadgets, we also build wind and solar power plants. For special equipment, we scavenge spaceships that crashed a long time ago. Along the way, we also find out a bit about ourselves. For example, we are not here purely for pleasure, but as a punishment. We get intergalactic emails from the company that sent us here and from other planet crafters out there. So humanity can soon look forward to many more worlds to colonize. The planet crafter follows in the footsteps of many of its genre colleagues. We start with few resources and gradually develop into an all-round talent. All the tools we need, planter boxes, heaters, and so on, start at a low level and become more effective over time as we change the planet. Or at least we get stronger versions of them that we can build. Bit by bit, we are making the planet comfortable for humanity. From the blue sky to the first plants. Along the way, we keep upgrading our infrastructure, providing more power and making our personal equipment fit for our efforts. All in all, this sounds quite similar to other survival games and is exactly the same. The big twist here is the gradual change in our environment. Otherwise, the Planet Crafter does much the same as its genre colleagues. Our recipes are gradually improved and we blithely collect resource after resource. That's not a bad thing per se, it can just get a little repetitive in the long run. Rottwood's roguelite structure is typical of contemporary games. In the first biome, you hop between 2 5D forest glades, bashing away at the enemies in each before moving on to the next, which might contain more enemies, a shopkeeper, or a surprise. After clearing a room, you're sometimes rewarded with a new power. These are minor bonuses at first. Move faster when you enter a room, shoot a projectile after every 3 melee attacks. But as in games like Slay the Spire and Risk of Rain, you get more and more OP as you stack on synergistic powers and upgrade them. By the time I reached the first boss, the first heavy attack I used in a room dealt 500 damage to every enemy. To complete an area and unlock the next one, you have to fully traverse it in 1 life, which includes defeating a mini-boss and boss, and you only get 1 health potion to use along the way. It's easy to keep the basic bug-vegetable forest enemies at bay by spamming light and heavy attacks, and they generously telegraph their attacks so you can dodge roll out of their way. But you eat a lot of damage when you're hit. It's not extraordinarily difficult, but it only takes a few lapses of attention before you're cooked, and there are unlockable difficulty levels. This game offers combos to spice things up. There's a great attack called Golf Swing, where you dodge roll in one direction and then immediately spin 180 degrees and swing your hammer, the starting weapon, like you're trying to send whatever was behind you moonward. Chaining 15+ attacks to clear a room with a single string of button presses feels nice. Rottwood's early access version includes 4 biomes with mini-bosses and bosses and 4 weapon classes. Cly estimates that mastering those presently available weapons and locations will take 10-25 hours. Asuka is a good survival crafting game. Because you don't have to survive or craft, these tasks will do your tribe for you. Asuka is a survival game that transports you to the world of the Vikings. You take on the role of a tribal leader who builds and manages a self-sufficient village from scratch. You will be assisted in your task by NPCs that you must lead and organize so that they work effectively and survive in battle. You will explore a dynamically generated world, discover hidden caves, and collect vital resources. At the same time, you will face the challenges of changing seasons and fight mystical enemies. What will remind many players of Valheim is above all the visuals and the flair of the game, which is strongly reminiscent of the extremely successful survival hit. Just like in Valheim, there seem to be powerful bosses in Asuka that need to be defeated, and you can do this with up to 3 friends. However, Asuka is clearly different from Valheim in one respect. Your main objective is to build up your tribe. Asuka excels in offering a multifaceted survival experience with a strong emphasis on exploration, crafting, and strategic planning. Multiplayer mode can significantly enhance the gameplay, making it more enjoyable and dynamic as players work together to survive and thrive. However, the complexity of the game systems can be daunting for newcomers, requiring a significant amount of time to master. Additionally, the potential for resource management to become tedious can slightly hinder the overall experience. Despite these minor drawbacks, the gameplay remains highly engaging and rewarding, with a variety of activities to keep players invested. Asuka delivers a compelling survival experience with a unique Norse mythology twist. Its strengths lie in its immersive world, management gameplay, and comprehensive crafting and building systems. While it has some areas that could be improved, such as its grindy nature and lack of freedom for creativity, it remains an engaging game that fans of the genre will likely find much to enjoy. The game provides a solid and immersive survival experience that, despite its flaws, offers a rewarding journey for those willing to invest the time and effort. Lightyear Frontier's biggest conceit is that it's a purely peaceful game. There's absolutely no combat here and no real time pressure either. It's designed from the ground up as a chill experience. There are in-game days that tick by, but you're not required to sleep in a bed at night or anything, and there are no time limits to run up against. It delivers well on that angle, as I found its relaxed pace to be pretty soothing. In fact, if you try to rush or optimize your way through it, you'll probably stress yourself out for no reason. Lightyear Frontier is at its best when I realized it just wanted me to explore, find stuff, and enjoy myself. It's a game as much about taking in its nicely handcrafted open alien world, building cool stuff and decorating it as you go, as it is about farming and crafting. A short or open-ended story isn't a sin in a game like Lightyear Frontier It just has to be paced in such a way as to deliver a real arc or end that feels like it's feeding into the post-story activity of building a larger farm and unlocking all the decoratable stuff. After all, the game lasts around 20 hours, getting more mech upgrades and making the new buildings and decorations you now had access to. What really brings this cozy game to life are the decorations, also known as constructs. You'll uncover the plans for these constructs on your own as you find new resources, and you can purchase new constructs from Lola as well. The more decorations added to your homestead, the higher your coziness level is. This not only helps you feel more at home on the frontier, but it also offers unique benefits, like more resources to be found. Lightyear Frontier is already a fun farming and crafting game that takes some pretty simple genre basics and makes them exciting again by putting you in a big ol' stompy robot suit. Things can start a little slow, and the story definitely ends too early as of its early access launch. But the charming world to explore and make your own outshines its current limitations. One of the more unique and interesting deck builders to emerge in the last few years was Hellard, a battler that put up to 3 characters against hordes of enemies coming from every direction, with nasty elites and bosses liberally sprinkled in for flavor. Hellard focuses on turn-based card combat of your party, up to 3 heroes in both single-player and co-op, against a horde of monsters. The 2 sides alternate between teams, with the heroes attempting to defeat enemies tactically based on their declared action for the next round. Every playthrough is procedurally generated in roguelite fashion. I've played several of these cooperative deck builders, both on digital and tabletop, and this is one of the only ones that really feels like it was designed ground up to earn the co-op label. While Book of Demons was an action role-playing game based on Diablo, Hellard is a card battler. Countless of these have been released in recent years, especially after the huge success of Slay the Spire. But Hellard is not just another soulless clone. The developers have tried to bring new ideas to the somewhat stale genre. The most obvious new feature is that it is important where the monsters and your heroes actually stand during battles. An isometric view of the battle is shown, and your opponents can move. So if you rain down a rain of fire on a certain area, only the enemies that are actually standing there will be affected. The 5D view works quite well and expands the strategic possibilities considerably. Like in a classic card battler, you play your cards turn by turn, as do your opponents, but your opponents also move, entering the playing field from all sides. You yourself stand in the middle of the playing field, which is divided into 3 areas, plus a melee and ranged combat area. Your goal is to defeat the archdemon that lives at the bottom of the dungeon. You can tackle this in single-player mode, in which you can control up to 3 characters. But another highlight of Hellard is the online multiplayer mode. You can also play the game with 2 or 3 players, and I haven't seen that very often in card battlers. In any case, I've never seen it implemented so well because you play the round with your friends at the same time, which works really well. For some people, Palworld might be a little too much, and too overwhelming since it brings together elements from so many different games and genres. But as a person whose gaming taste has been largely shaped by series like Pokemon, Fortnite, The Legend of Zelda, and Minecraft, the awkward hodgepodge of Palworld feels like it's tailor-made for you. Palworld starts with a tutorial that functions like an extended to-do list guiding players up to the first boss fight. Slowly, but surely, I have worked my way up from picking objects up off the ground to crafting items and harvesting materials, then automating several resource collection processes by continually upgrading my bases and putting my Pokemon-like pal creatures to work. Palworld offers a very recognizable survival crafting system with the whole real-time Pokemon element merged through it. Overall, it's a setup that's not particularly distinct from any of the other survival crafters you can find out there, at least with the exception of the Pokemon factor. That element in particular is often fully automated, and not always to the game or player's benefit. Once out of their sphere, pals are basically free to do their own thing, meaning they frequently make stupid choices or mindlessly sabotage you, often killing something that you're trying to catch or stumbling into peril. As a result, there's not much space for tactical thought in the average fight. You sling out a pal, and retreat to a safe distance to watch the fracas, maybe running in to land a few hits if you're feeling brave. If you are willing to get stuck into the fray, the gun and melee combat isn't exactly deep. Swinging a stick or opening fire interspersed with the occasional stamina-chewing roly-poly is ultimately the sum total of your options in most encounters. V-Rising is an action role-playing survival game. V-Rising's best feature is one you'll clock onto within seconds of rising from your vampiric crypt. It's a sense of direction and purpose. It feels bizarre to praise a game so heavily for nudging you along a set path to begin with, but in the face of genre contemporaries where much of the early progression is a grind with no real signposting, it's a breath of fresh air. You wake up, kill skeletons to get bones, then fashion some bone weaponry. What also helps is that V-Rising takes place from a zoomed-out third-person perspective, and combat is deliciously dance-like. Players begin with the ability to fire a skill shot at an enemy, swing with their equipped weapon, or dodge. It's not quite Diablo levels of ARPG, but it certainly nails the fundamentals. Weapons have unique attack patterns, and crafting new ones always feels like a reward earned. Even at its most basic, nuts and bolts level, V-Rising is a cut above so many early access games. While it's fun to tear through skeletons, though, you'll accrue plenty of material in the initial hours to help make your mark on the map. Hunting down the Alpha Wolf boss is a fun fight that sees the beast ensure you use plenty of healing items. Once you've killed it, you can gain the ability to traverse distances more quickly by turning into a wolf. Other bosses grant additional skills like flinging magic projectiles and healing spells. These are swappable to allow you to tailor your vamp to fit your playstyle, but it also makes Coop much more fun. V-Rising offers PvP servers where you can pillage the fortresses of others, but PvE with friends is where this game shines. You can hunt bosses as a trio, exchange resources, and build ever more extravagant castles. Raiding by moonlight is strangely relaxing, as is piling resources into growing our respective vampiric empires, and there's always something around each corner. With super tight gameplay, an outrageous amount of feedback, and tons of ludicrous, senseless sci-fi violence, Helldivers 2 is a total joyride and a really popular sequel. Visually, Helldivers 2 benefits immensely from the move from top-down to full third-person 3D visuals. The gameplay loop is so tight it would be laughably slim in the wrong hands. You team up, hit the planet, kill things, collect stuff, then extract to count your earnings and buy better weapons. Repeat until exhausted. Leveling up unlocks new collections of deadlier hardware, but it's basically the same thing over and over again until the planet has been liberated and you and all the other players in the world move on to another. Why doesn't this get tired really quickly? Because Arrowhead has concentrated all its design attention on making every facet of the experience minutely enjoyable. The guns feel chunky, varied, and impactful. Every direct hit is accompanied by a tidal wave of insect goo or tangled metal. The sounds of missile strikes and napalm blasts are like fiery symphonies of destruction. This is a game that truly understands the value of intense, disproportionate feedback. The best shooters encourage players to take part in a way that suits the game's tone and universe, and Helldivers 2 is certainly one of them. You play in a sort of demented panic, calling in airstrikes with abandon and getting through ammo so fast you end up carrying huge backpacks of the stuff everywhere you go. Missions vary from raising patriotic flags to realigning communications equipment and rescuing civilian colonists, but there are always side tasks too, including destroying bases and exploring abandoned research stations. You may also discover samples, which can be collected to buy spacecraft upgrades, and medals, which get you new armor and custom items.